Welcome everybody to another episode of Community Voices. Hope everybody's doing good and feeling great. Today, it's also Hispanic Heritage Month, and I think it's extremely important to make sure that we're continuously amplifying voices, continuously doing work, and also just being cognizant of what's going on now and currently, and just where we're at, and making sure we pay homage to those moments. So today, I'm very excited to be joined by. I'm already stuttering. That's how you know I'm excited. To be joined by content creator, but I like saying content creator, but also multifaceted because content creators are just in so many different aspects. Also a model. So like I said, again, I could just say a bunch of things. Jenn Torres, how you doing today? How you feeling? Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much, Devin, for having me, and thank you so much for the multifaceted. It's true. When you're a content creator or creative, you literally do everything. Yeah, so I appreciate that. And thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to talk with y'all and to share with y'all my thoughts on Hispanic Heritage Month. Like, this is just so cool that you guys do this. So, thanks again for having me. I'm so
Absolutely.
excited to
Listen,
be
I'm
here.
always glad to be sitting aside, well, virtually sitting with somebody who's just as excited as I am. So I'm glad that you're passionate and excited about it. I know I mentioned it to kick it off, Hispanic Heritage Month. For me, I grew up in Corpus Christi, Texas. I'm not originally from Colorado, so I grew up around the rich history of it a lot, and it taught me a different appreciation and just a different insight and perspective to just the life and the deep, rich culture that involves in it, that's involved in it. So I have a very deep appreciation for it, not just this month, but like year round. Of course, there's always standing by their struggles or our struggles and things like that. But that's me. I would love to know, what does Hispanic Heritage Month mean to you, and how did you kind of like, where was it? It probably was instilled in you since you were young, but like, where did that like? How does that rich history make you feel, and how do you embody it today and try to pass that on, to the homies around you, to like I said, homies, that's my typical thing, but like your friends and things like that.
They're all homies to me, trust. I only have homies, friends, and family, so you're good.
I
You're
was
good.
trying to say my interview bag, and I was like, I was talking with the homies. Like, let me clean it up. But yeah, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to you?
Oh, well, it means to me a lot. So, just a little background story of me. I'm from South Central Los Angeles, so I grew up in Watts. And my parents are from Zacatecas, Mexico, which is like mid Mexico. So, it's a lot of like ranch. That's kind of like the geography of it. And so that makes me first generation. My parents came here, I believe, like around the 80s, and they moved to South Central. They moved to Watts, and they've just been there since. So I grew up with a lot of black and brown people my whole life. And for me, so that's why, like, when you said, like, you grew up in Texas, so a lot of like Tejanos and Tejano culture, and it's
Hmm.
so beautiful. Like, our struggles are our struggles together, like, and I love that. I think we need as much unity as we can, especially right now. So this is really, really cool. So back to your question, Hispanic Heritage Month to me means so much. Granted, I do feel like Hispanic Heritage Month should be all year round, but
Hmm.
it's just a little extra. It's a time where we're able to really like highlight and uplift our Latino voices. We're also able to highlight how diverse we are because Latinidad is so diverse and very, very different because Latinos in Texas are so different from the Latinos in LA and like vice versa. And there's just so many like flavors of us in the whole entire world. And for Hispanic Heritage Month, I think it's such a beautiful time for us to like celebrate that diversity, celebrate our stories. And when we share our stories, we create connection. And with connection comes community. And especially now more than ever, we need community. So, yeah, that's what Hispanic Heritage Month means to me. It's a time where we're able to just be, where we're able to celebrate ourselves, where we're super prideful of like our roots and our heritage. And that's something that I have always carried in anything that I do. I always carry like how proud I am for being like Chicana and being first gen and coming from immigrant parents. Like it's just I'm just very I wouldn't have it any other way. Like that's what makes me me and that's what makes my content and my art and my community so beautiful.
I love it. I love it. And I'm glad you mentioned we kind of like really honed in on community, because that was the next piece I wanted to ask you about. I think, full transparency, originally I was going to ask you, like, what was the first time you had that sense of community, but I feel like, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But I feel like when you grow up with that like rich history and like LA, like everywhere, like the history is rich. You almost sense community before you know what community actually is. But I think maybe the better question to ask is, what does community look like for you at this point in age? So I feel like growing up, community can at first have the meaning of family, your immediate circle, your neighborhood, things like that. But then as we get older, community becomes, the people who are in the next neighborhood or in different areas or your circles, or now with social, it could be somebody across the nation who you're trying to stay tapped into to make sure that you're having a community impact amongst worldwide. So, what does community feel like and look like to you today in this point in time?
Oh, I love that question because I was going to answer the original question as like, yeah, community has always been like my first introduction has always been my family. Doing like carne asadas, quinceañeras, like just like parties that we come together and we check in, and life can be really hard, and it's always really nice to kind of like have those moments or having like a kickback at the house and checking in with like our families and our friends. So for me, now that I'm older, I feel that like those moments are so important to create, especially with like your chosen family. Now we're adults, so with that, it's like creating our own traditions, bringing people in. And for me, I always love to bring people that never necessarily have ever experienced like a carne asada or like a quinceañera or anything like that, because then they're like, oh damn, like this is really really cool what you guys bring. And so at least with me, now that I'm a little bit older and I have like my own space, it's really important to recreate those moments, but with my chosen family, which is like my friends and my loved ones, probably people that aren't necessarily like blood, but they're blood to me, you
Yeah.
know. And when it comes to like the greater scheme, especially with like social media and stuff, it's now we live in a time where we could build community with people from all over the world, and it's so beautiful to see how like diverse, like again how diverse like our stories can be. Because like when you're a content creator, the goal is to share your stories, the goal is to also find connection, find community. And it's been so beautiful that I have had the opportunity to create with people from New York. I have been able to create with people from like all over the world. And yes, we might have different stories, but we still have some similarities where we connect and where we could learn from each other, which I think it's like really really beautiful. And I think that's at the end of the day the essence of community, is just connection, it's just connecting with
Mhm.
people. And now there's so many ways of connecting, which I really really love. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Nah, you hit it right on the head. You nailed it on the head. And I think to that point too, just even being exposed to different cultures, I think is so important because it's a if you come to it with the right mind, it can be very insightful. It can be very intriguing. It can be very, you just gain this different appreciation for just like almost like just like the human experience, but also just like the human experience from different lenses. If you really approach it that way, so I love how you mentioned that. I remember growing up too, going to like my friend had a quince, and I was like what is that? Like we call those birthday parties, be having like cook whatever it is. Like what is that? And then you experience it, and you're like, oh, like
Yeah,
it's the whole thing from like the venue to the dressing to
the
and all
sound.
how different cultures do it, and you just have like a whole different. It just like opens up your mind in like the most richest and like enlightening way. So I
Yeah,
totally get that.
and vice versa too. Like growing up, I also had like my black homegirls who would invite me to like their cookouts, and I'm just like, this is so different but the same.
Yes, yes, it's like a different tone of celebration, but it's just like the same exactly, and which is like the beauty of it because again, you get to just see how the commonalities that are really there, even though sometimes we live in a day and world where we're always trying to separate everything. It's like good to see like where we're actually intertwined. And I think on to the piece of separation, I do want to ask this because I think oftentimes, especially now in this day and age, I think with social, it's easy for everybody to have a voice. With content creation, it's also a avenue that is created and afforded to us to where we're able to use our talents to make sure that our art is not just being one that's entertaining or something that is authentic and true to us, but also that reflects the times when needed, and we using our platform and how we feel moved or led. When it comes to you know making sure that you continue not just to like part of communities also like standing for your community, speaking for your community, making sure that in any way possible, even if it may seem small to others or big to others, that, we're also protecting community and supporting community. I think to be a part of it, you also have to like help build it.
Yeah.
So how does that kind of feel for you, and how do you kind of find that balance of like creation and like, you know, when you're even moved to speak to certain things or have your art speak to certain things where you want to really take care of your community? How do you find that balance to like do so?
Oh, I love that question. For me, because my content has always centered community and my heritage and my culture, I can't ignore what's going on, especially with all the ICE raids. Like I would be doing such a disservice as a content creator, as a model, and also for me, it just doesn't sit well with like my spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does their own way of supporting community. I think that's also another thing. Everyone has a different like bandwidth of stuff, which is totally okay. I really love to uplift and highlight organizations and people that are actually doing the groundwork because that's really important. I myself, I'm not necessarily doing the groundwork, but with like my following, I could definitely highlight organizations that are like for example Chirla, who is a nonprofit that helps immigrant families and individuals, and especially now they need our help more than ever. So thank you so much, JD and Adidas Original, for donating $10,000 to this organization. This means so much to me, and I think this is exactly what brands need to be doing more, especially because if they want to be a part of the culture and part of the community, give back. So thanks again. I really, really love that. And for me too, I think it's also really important to stay connected, learn about your local organizations that are doing the groundwork. Learning new things is really be open to learning, especially for someone that might not necessarily know what's exactly is going on or why this is such like a big thing. Just learn, just ask questions, check in with like an organization. They always have on their websites, they have an about, and you could find ways of donating. If you can't donate, support in other ways, show up to like organizations, marches, community events, or even just also like supporting like your local like Latino businesses that are in your neighborhood. That could go so long, like that could be such a big, big, big thing in helping community and how you could show up for a community and a community that's yours or even a community that you don't necessarily are a part of, but we could still help each other because when we're strong, because we are stronger together regardless of anything else. So I hope that helped.
No, listen. If I literally could end the episode out of this, I have a couple more questions. But I could end it the way that you answered that question. It was amazing. It was perfect. Yes. Also, thank you for speaking to the donation piece. I was going to ask you like, like because can you say the donation, the charity again?
Chirla.
She said, "See, I wouldn't have done that. I would have botched it. I didn't want to do that. So I'm
It's
glad.
okay,
I'm
I
glad you
got
got
you.
ahead of it. I'm glad you got ahead of it. And again, yes, I'm excited. That, that's one of the best things about being able to have these conversations is like the community impact we have, which is why personally am very proud to work with JD to do these things, and of course like brands like Adidas Original to like help make this impact happen because these things, it's the stuff that you don't see. These seems like dollars and points and dollars on like paper and conversation, but when those funds hit and the change starts to happen, that's where the actual work comes from. And I love that you kind of spoke to just the ways that people can make a difference. I think and I think we probably have all hit this point before. It's depending on how heavy our days are or the situation is. But sometimes I think people get those feelings of like I'm not doing enough or
Yeah.
things like that. And it's like I think to your point, you know everybody doesn't have to be a leader and do the biggest thing and make the biggest change and be the biggest advocate and hold the microphone. Sometimes it is about showing up to make the numbers bigger. Sometimes it is about amplifying a voice. Sometimes it is about, using your platform to speak on a certain thing and things like that. So, I think you spoke to that perfect example of, even when times are hard and heavy, it's just about doing what you can where you can and just showing up and supporting those who maybe even doing more or doing the same and not necessarily having to be the hero of like the main character, which how the world makes us make the world makes it sound like we have to be the main character, we all have to be the hero, but it's not always going to be like that to have actual change. So I love that you even spoke to that.
Yeah, and there's already people, amazing people in our community that are doing like the heavy groundwork, and all they need is just help and support, and you could help and support in like your own way. And there's just so many options. So, but I do understand that it could feel so overwhelming, especially right now. It could feel very hopeless. But when we do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, we're moving forward regardless. So, yeah. So take it easy, guys. Take it easy.
I love it. I love it. I'm gonna before I close this conversation. This has been amazing. Some super awesome conversation. I want to ask this. Let me just make sure I wrap my brain around how to ask this question. I think again, you mentioned earlier that it's almost impossible to ignore you know your spirit and how you feel, how things move you, and to have a voice to speak on certain things and make sure truths are at the forefront, and sharing your experience, which is something I can extremely relate to, and that I think that we're aligned on, very foundationally. I think one thing, not just for myself, but others, and probably as a content creator too, and just a model, and just multifaceted, like creative in general. Sometimes it's hard to find the balance of being so passionate to do so much help and be such a voice and uplift and constantly make sure that the stories that matter are at the forefront, but then not doing it to the point where we're also missing out on life, like the
Yeah.
joy that keeps that filled, or like the things that are happening around us, or like the human experience outside of the turmoil that's going around. How do you personally find that balance and maintain that?
Oh my God, I love the question because it was actually on my notes that something that I also wanted to share is that in these moments of hardship, in these moments of political unrest, be finding joy is actually very radical. So for me, I try my best to find joy every day at least. I try. Okay, sometimes it's easier than other days, but for me, finding the joy, things that fill my cup, even if it's like walking my dog or like playing my Hello Kitty Island adventure game, or if it's like going out to the movies or just something that's gonna fill my cup, I need to do that first. It's like that analogy of like the airplane, like you really need to put your mask on first before you could help
Mm,
anybody else. And that's
mhm.
really important, finding that joy, especially in this political climate. It's so important that we are still filling up our cup first, because when we don't, we're giving from an empty cup, and that's not going to help anybody, and it's not going to help you, and you could actually get physically sick. And we need people not to be sick, we need people to be happy. Well, I know sometimes it might be hard to be happy, but we just need people that are still finding joy within themselves, finding joy within life, because honestly, that is such a radical thing to do, because they want us to be sad. And we're not going to be sad because we have each other and we're trying our best to really help one another. So finding radical joy is so important. For me, honestly, is being with my dog, being with my partner, playing video games, being with my friends, doing these like carne asadas at my house. Like that brings me so much joy when I'm able to host like my friends, my close friends. I'm like, "Hey, it's a Thursday. Come over. Let's make pizza. Let's grill some. Let's put something on the grill. Let's watch a fight, like the boxing fight that just happened. That was so cool. We hosted that and it was so much fun. Let's host like a game, or let's host like a game night, something very just chill. Just being around people, at least for me, fills me up so much because it's a nice check-in on like, hey, how's everybody doing? Usually everybody's feeling the same way, like, wow, this week was tough, but we have time where we can come together and we could check in and we're like physically here. So, and we could physically feel the joy. So, yeah, that's how I community, I guess community really does bring me joy.
I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, I love that. I think that's like a perfect point to wrap it all up. I think again, you can't. Emotions are going to make us feel a certain way and inspire us to do things, but they can't always be, the. But I think that the quote is too, like, you can't always operate from an emotional place. But I think that place of joy is such a pure feeling, that like it's the only way you can operate strategically in a smart way. And actually, I think to your point, having joy is what allows you to be able to feel these different positive and negative emotions from a rational place instead of an irrational place, because you're not empty when you're trying to feel these different things that may take or pour into you. So I love that you mentioned that, like having that joy is radical because we live in a world, it's always meant to like trying to suppress you or take away your joy at every point, take away your rights at every point. The list
Yeah.
goes on. But I love that you meant that. Like that is also a radical thing to do. So like don't ignore the joy that you can get in your life on the day to day, from the biggest levels to the smallest levels. So I think
Yeah.
you mentioned it perfectly.
Yeah, and don't feel bad either. Do not feel bad
Mm.
of finding and embracing that joy. I feel like sometimes a lot of people can kind of feel like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this. I shouldn't be happy right now. But it's like, it's okay. You're allowed to have positive feelings. You're allowed to be happy. You're allowed to find that joy in your life because that is really important.
And I'm not going to say anything else on top of that as the perfect way to bring this conversation to a close. Jen, thank you so much for, again, not just, cutting out time, which is also important, which we respect and appreciate so much, but it's, again, speaking your truth, being who you are, staying true to you and everything you do, and continuing to put your community and your story at the forefront while not losing yourself, which is a perfect example of how we should, navigate through this life, the goods and the bad. So I just appreciate your time again for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be able to do this with y'all. This is amazing. Thank you again for having me. I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. I appreciate it as well. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of Community Voices. Till next time, take care, y'all.